2000 гаруй жил 2001 орчим жил бол монголчууд ер нь бурхан шин дэлгэрсэн орон байгаа юм. Тэгэхээр энэ бурхан багшийн шашин ном дэлгэрсэн эртний одоо Азийн орнууд дотор бол Монгол орн бол их эрт дэлгэрсэн орн үздэг.
За Монголд бол бурхан шашин бол 3-тай маш сайхан дэлгэрсэн гэж үздэг тийм яриаг өгчтэй.
Тийм. Тэгэхээр ер нь бол бурхан бид бол эртний хүннүү, сямби, нэрэн ус гэдэг Монголын одоо дээд өвг одоо дээдсүүд бол ер нь бол энтикээс шууд бурхан сургаалыг бол дэлгэрүүлсэн одоо дэлгэрүүлсэн тийм. Тэгэхээр ер нь бурхан шашны дэлгэрсэн түүхийг Монгол оронд хараад байхад бол эртний одоо энтикээс дундаа зэн нутгаар дамжиж ялангуяа тэр Ли орон гэж нэрлэгдсэн оронд бурхан шашны бол асар их хөгжсөн гол одоо цөм газар байсан. Энэ Ли орон гэдэг бол Монголын одоо эртний одоогийн бол хотгийн нутаг. Түүнд бол бурхны шашин сургаал их хэлбэрээр ялангуяа их энэ одоо байсан олон жилээс бол монголчуудын хүмүүстийн дээд өвдөцөд бол олон жилийн авч тэгэхээр тэр хүмүүгийн дараа Сямбигийн үед бол Монгол бол маш их олон сүмхийд байгуулагдаж ялангуяа тэр одоо Дүн хааны одоо агуун соёл гэж дэлхийн нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагын соёлын өвд авсан тэр бурхны чуулбар зохицлоор орон болсон дотор монголчуудын бүтээсэн бурхан бол бас ихтэй байгаа юм. Тэгэхээр үүнээс уламжлаад болов энэ одоо Күнү Сямбигийн дараа дэлгэрч ирсэн энэ үед бол нэрвэн улсын үед бол бурхны шашин бол Монголын төрийн шашин болж юм гэж тохиолдсон. Тэгэхээр энэ одоо бол бид л бурхны шашин ер нь бол дэлгэрээд 400 орчим жил болж байгаа гэж ингэж үзчихсэн бол энэ бол ойлголцол да. Ер нь бол бурхны шашин бол монголчууд бурхны шашинтай бас нь бол 2000 гаруй жил бол автаа байгаа юм аа.
За ингээд өнөөдрийн их дүүч өдрийн бас нэгэн сайхан онцлог бол дээрхийн гинтэн 14-р далаа хаш монголчууд айлтгуулсан бичлэгээ хэлбэл байгаа. Энэ бол энтиг бас Нармаслан хотоос одоо шууд бид бүгдээ холбогдох юм аа. Ингээ үзэгч та Далай Ламын айлын бичлэгийг хүлээн авч үзсэн үү?
Так гараа.
Сококембо танд мендээх жааж гэж явж байгаа.
Ка.
Мендээх жааж гэж. Танд концерт TV 태동 이비 концерт 이 투에 디테일스 감사 채팅.
콘서 갔잖아요, 그래.
민데 지지. 단다 TV 인체리 판에 또 스칼레 있어.
It seems there's some technical problem from the Mongolian side. It's taking time because they are preparing to live telecast in Mongolia. This teaching to the Mongolians first.
хэлээд энэ тухай та зэрэг.
Тийм тэгдэг яг хаа. Тэгэхээр одоо бол бурхан шишний одоо хамгийн дээд тэргүүн бидний бүхний хүндэтгэн одоо бурхан багшлага адил одоо залбирдаг. Эрхэн гинт далаа багшийнхаа одоо түмэн амар Монголынхаа одоо өмнөөс төлөөлж хамлан могоомын сая далаа багштай бол манд одоо шүтийн одоо өсөлтийг өргөлөө.
Яа да тэрий.
Далаа багштайгаа одоо аль дээрх зарлиг сургаалыг сонсож байна.
So, with my due deep respect to the Buddha Shakyamuni, our teacher, I am going to do a short teaching for the Mongolian Dhamma brothers and sisters. So, as we all know, Tibetan Mongolia had a unique connection. And the Mongolian Dharma friends, spiritual friends, most of them are followers of the Master Tsongkhapa's tradition, Master Tsongkhapa. So I wish to tell you that, as the Buddha has said, you are your own master. So the Buddha's teaching says that your future is in your hands, whereas other religious traditions talk about everything being in the hands of the God, the respective God. But the Buddha says that if you do good, if you create good karma, then you will have a good fruit of that as happiness, in the form of happiness. And if you are not able to do anything good, and you pass your life like that, then the Buddha cannot save you. Therefore, you are your own master, he has said. So since your happiness or suffering are in your hands, therefore you yourself, since you don't want suffering and you want happiness, which is natural to everyone, down to the smallest insects and ants, human beings have this mind with which we are able to understand different things. And therefore, we should know that our joy and happiness or suffering and misery comes from your own mind, your way of thinking. But if you are unable to tame your mind, you have an unruly mind, then you suffer, and you also create suffering for others, and you also harm others. And therefore, taming the mind is happiness, and without not doing that is suffering. So disciplining our mind is taught by all religious traditions, but here in Buddhism, the method to discipline our mind or tame our mind is not merely through prayers, but by using your own mind and thinking through, so that you are able to control your emotions, negative emotions. And therefore the Buddha has said, it is said in a sutra that the Buddha used hundreds of different means to lead sentient beings to freedom from suffering, because by teaching that things are empty, peaceful, and so forth, and unborn nature. Because of not knowing that we sentient beings wander in this cycle of existence. So because our mind is undisciplined, uncontrolled, therefore we create the causes for suffering. So as the scientists also say, we as human beings are social animals. Since we live in communities, an individual's survival is based on their community, and therefore we have love and compassion towards sentient beings, the people in our community. It is the same with animals that live in communities, in herds. So the scientists also say that because these animals survive, they are dependent on for their survival on their group. Therefore, they are kept together by love and affection. So that is, since this is the case with, though this is the case with our with us as human beings, but as we grow up and become older, we forget this dependence on others, and therefore we do things in order to win, have victory over others and defeat others. And therefore, what we need is a good heart, a warm-heartedness. So since we are dependent on our communities, our groups, right from the beginning of our life, we were born from our mothers, and we were nurtured by our mother with great care and love and affection. So we started our life in this way. But as we grow up and become older, and then we also have the community, the society, which becomes very active and have a hectic life. There is a decrease in our love, affection towards the people in our community. And therefore, love and affection must be paid attention, especially, which are, of course, we are equipped with them biologically as well. And therefore, if you can also share this knowledge with others as well, whether they are believers in religion or not. And amongst the religious believers also, all religions teach, of course, that of love and affection. So for Buddhists, the obstacle to developing love and compassion is this self-cherishing attitude, which in turn is based on a self or a basis for our things on which we depend for our joy and happiness, as if they exist from their own side objectively. And we also consider as if our near and dear ones and the so-called enemies or adversaries existing from their own side. And that somehow becomes stronger and stronger in us. So in physics, and particularly it's quantum physics, what they say is, when external objects appear to us, they appear as if they have some objective existence. But that is not true. That is not the way things exist. The quantum physicists say, although we do perceive people either as our near and dear ones or enemies or adversaries, and accordingly we grow attachment towards the loved ones, and those attachment, anger towards those adversaries or enemies. Because of that appearance on which we grasp, so whether we call people as our near and dear ones, loved ones, or our enemies, they do not exist objectively as loved ones or near and dear ones or enemies as such from their own side. So this is also what is taught in our tradition as well, in our scriptures. So what I wish to tell my Mongolian spiritual friends is that we want to create happiness and joy for ourselves and our communities. For that, if you are able to develop a peaceful mind, it'll happen. So, whether you Mongolians are, whether you are believers or not, of course, most of you are Buddhists, and particularly followers of the Geluk tradition. So, as I said before, you are followers of Rinpoche, Tsongkhapa. So, Rinpoche was an Amdo from Amdo. So he himself has said that during this degenerate time, he made his life meaningful by engaging. So in this degenerate, you strove for extensive learning and meditation, abandoning the 8 mundane concerns. You made meaningful your life of leisure and opportunity. O Lord Protector, we sincerely rejoice in your stupendous deeds. So whatever we have heard regarding the teaching of the Buddha, we need to practice them and strive in meditation. And so, regarding you, the Mongolians, since you are followers of Rinpoche, Master Tsongkhapa, you need to train in like Tsongkhapa. So for that you need first to study the Dharma, which is very important. So as I quoted some lines from a sutra, the Buddha led sentient beings by teaching that things are empty, peaceful, unborn. Because of not knowing it, the sentient beings wonder. And so, as Rinpoche himself has, as the prayer for the flourishing of Master Tsongkhapa's teaching says, so we should engage in the study of the teaching. So when I was in Mongolia, I did advise you that you should not only do prayers and rituals, but you should actually study the Dharma. So the chief monastery of Mongolia, Gadin Tekchingling. So though you have this tradition of offering reciting the prayer very loudly while making mandala offerings, but it's important to pursue the study of the Dharma. So we have lots of monks from Mongolia in our monastic institutions here in exile. So in Mongolia also, it is very important for you to in the monasteries to have the study of the Indian classic texts. So when the monks from the monastic institutions that are in India, our monastic institutions, these Mongolian monks who come back to Mongolia, you should make sure that they engage in the study of the Dharma. And in the Geluk tradition, the study of Buddhism and its philosophy and logic is done through debate. So since our childhood, in our tradition in Tibet, when we study, from our child, beginning with our study of the collected topics, then the study of mind and awareness, and then also the study of logic. And these are very helpful to keep your mind alert.
So,
for example, we saw the Khyentse Lama. He has a big head, but you should use that big head or the large size head to pursue the study of Buddhism through debate and logic, be able to differentiate between the provisional or interpretable and the definitive meanings of the teaching of the Buddha. Whether the teachings can be taken literally or not, you should study about that. So we in exile have emphasized this tradition, which comes from the Nalanda tradition, whereas in the Pali tradition, there was no such emphasis on study of logic. But in the Nalanda tradition, the study of logic is greatly emphasized, and therefore in Tibet, beginning with Chaba Chögyal Sengye, who started this debate in Tibet, where we use formal syllogisms as well as reductio ad absurdum, or consequential logic, which was started by Chaba Chögyal Sengye in Tibet. So in the past, there used to be many Mongolian scholars in our monastic institutions back in Tibet, especially in the three monastic seats of learning, Sera, Gaden, and Drepung. And there were many Mongolians, great scholars from Mongolia. So, for example, one of them was my debate assistant, Ngudrup. So just as the past generation of Mongolians studied the philosophy, you should remember that they have left such a legacy. As I say, usually, that today we must become 21st century Buddhists. So how to become such is through the study of logic, philosophy based on logic, and then having understood the teaching based on logic and reasoning, be able to integrate the teaching within yourself in meditation, and thereby become a 21st century Buddhist. Otherwise, you will be just have a blind faith without any reason to believe in the teaching, though the teaching itself is not a blind faith as such, but because of your lack of knowledge, because you follow the teaching only on the basis of faith, it would be a blind faith, following the teaching on blind faith. So the teaching of the Buddha itself is not a blind faith. So we established the ground, the path, and the result through logic and reasoning. But because you have not studied it and you have not understood, you don't understand the teaching, you don't know the teaching, and therefore, for example, people who just follow the Lamrim teaching, saying that, oh, whatever the Lama says is true, That's not true. That should not be the case. Even if your Lama teaches you something, there's always an opportunity for you you have the right to still scrutinize that teaching. Because there could be some things that the Lama teaches which are not in accord with the teaching itself, on logic and so forth. And therefore, you Mongolians... Sorry. So I wish to emphasize and advise you to pursue the study of Buddhism, Buddhist philosophy, and through logic and reason. So as soon as we Tibetans became exiles here in India, in our schools, secular schools, Pandit Nehru, we requested that our children need separate schools to teach our own language, our own tradition, culture, and so forth. And therefore, we have also appointed religious or spiritual teachers in these schools as well. Although some of these teachers may not be well qualified. And then later, I also appealed to the different schools, Tibetan schools here in India, to have as part of the curriculum to teach debate to the students. And then I have also suggested in the monastic institutions down in South India to teach debate to lay people, to lay students, whether male or female, to come to the monasteries and for a month or two or so and have lessons in debate. And Varanasi, in the Sarnath Tibetan Institute also, there also I have suggested to have the study of debate for the students there, lay students especially. And therefore, to Mongolians, you, my brothers and sisters in the Dharma, for you too, if you do understand the teaching of the Buddha based on logic and reasoning, it would be helpful. For example, regarding myself, I have had discussions with the scientists, the modern scientists. So, of course, usually most of the scientists don't pay attention to religion as such. But since we began our dialogues and discussions with modern scientists, they also started paying attention to our spiritual tradition. So today the scientists also say that depending on whether your mind, you have a peaceful mind or not, whether you have controlled your emotions or not, you will have happiness or suffering. And therefore, they find the Buddhist psychology to be important. This is something new, a new insight for them. So there's a newfound interest from the scientists' side to learn from Buddhist psychology. And so I wish to tell you, my Mongolian Dharma brothers and sisters, to pursue the study of Dharma through logic and debate, starting with the monasteries first, monasteries and nunneries, and then you can teach in the schools. So I also, I have great hope in you, and I do pray for your success, and you should also put effort in being able to make it materialize it. And so if you are able to do that, then the teaching of the Buddha will remain in the 21st century and the next centuries. Of course, the world is changing. The climate conditions are changing. So until a time comes when the whole world also goes through, undergoes a havoc, I mean, you should still pursue this study of the Dharma. So that's all I wish to tell you. So that's all for the Mongolians. So mandala offering from the monks in our monastic institutions.
다 가셔서.
Making offering of mandala to His Holiness for the teaching on the three principal aspects of the path. Pure Lama, from the clouds of your compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. I prostrate to the Gautama who, moved by his compassion, taught the holy Dharma to rid us of all distorted views.
Saka Dawa,
So on this auspicious full moon day of Saka Dawa, the Vesak month, which is a very special day, so from the three monastics, the monastic seats of learning, as you have requested for the teaching on the three principal aspects of the path, an explanation of it. So the three principal aspects of the path is the essence of the stages of the path to enlightenment. So the three principles refer to the renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view. Seventh verse, it says they are being swept away constantly by four powerful rivers. They are bound tightly with fetters of karma, most difficult to escape. And in the verse number down to the verse number 8, they are trapped inside the iron mesh of self-grasping. They are enveloped from everywhere by thick mist of ignorance. They take rebirth. They take birth within the cyclic existence that has no end, where they are endlessly tormented by the sufferings, three sufferings. By reflecting on all my mothers who suffer such conditions, please generate the supreme awakening mind. So instead of saying all my mothers, you can say, by reflecting on the suffering condition of myself, I generate the supreme, the thought of renunciation. So the four powerful rivers sweep, the sentient beings are swept away by them, and then they are tightly bound by the fetters of karma, most difficult to escape, which in turn happens because of this trap of the iron mesh of self-grasping. And the self-grasping of in relation to the person happens because of grasping at true existence of the other phenomena. So we are enveloped or enshrouded within this thick mist, dense mist of ignorance, which is true, grasping at true existence. When this is very strong in us, whatever appears to us, like I said, with regard to quantum physics, what quantum physicists say, things appear as if they have some objective existence from their own side. And therefore, enshrouded by this thick mist of ignorance from everywhere, what we need to do now is, to counter this, is first to prove that things have no true existence. And so, for that reason, the Buddha first taught the teaching on the Four Noble Truths, and then the teaching on the perfection of wisdoms. And particularly in the Heart Sutra, there is mention of the fourfold emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form, and so forth. And so Master Nagarjuna was the one who explained this very thoroughly. As Rinpoche has said in his praise to the Buddha for teaching dependent origination, this Night Lily Grove of Nagarjuna's treatise, verse number 49, Nagarjuna, whom you prophesied would unravel your unexalted vehicle as it is, shunning extremes of existence and non-existence, illuminated by the garland of the white lights of Chandra's well-uttered insights, Chandra, whose stainless wisdom orb is full, who glides freely across scripture's space, who dispels the darkness of extremists' hearts and outshines the constellations of false speakers. So I usually recite certain lines from the Madhyamaka Avatara, which I usually quote, and then say these lines from the praise for dependent origination, for verse numbers 49, 50, and 51. And Master Nagarjuna himself says that ending the karma and delusions, there is liberation. And karma and delusions arise from conceptual constructions, and which in turn arises because of the fabrication, which is ended by emptiness, wisdom of emptiness. So to counter this ignorance, grasping at true existence, as Master Chandrakirti in chapter 6 of Madhyamaka Avatara says, verse number 34, which says, if the intrinsic characteristics of things were to arise dependently, things would come to be destroyed by denying it. Emptiness would then be a cause for the destruction of things, but this is illogical, so no real entities exist. So, of course, there are other reasonings to prove that things are empty of any intrinsic existence, such as the diamond slaver reasoning and so forth. But all of them are dependent or hinge, all these different reasonings hinge on the understanding of dependent origination of things. And therefore, that Madhyamaka Avatara next in verse number 35 says, thus, when such phenomena are analyzed, nothing is found as their nature apart from suchness. So the conventional truth of the everyday world should not be subjected to thorough analysis. So what this shows is that things are dependently designated. And Master Chandrakirti later on, towards the end of this text, says that the masters like Vasubandhu and so forth have abandoned this tradition of Master Nagarjuna. So terrified by the blinding color of the utterly vast ocean of Nagarjuna's wisdom, some have shunned and kept their distance from this most wonderful tradition. Verse number 54 of chapter, the final chapter. So which is the qualities of the 10 grounds of the resultant ground. 10 grounds and the resultant grounds. So verses 34, 35, 36 and 37 of the 6th chapter show that, as Rinpoche himself has made it very clear, that there are these 4 logical absurdities that you would have to face if you accept or assert that things have any intrinsic existence. So the four reductio ad absurdum stated in the Madhyamaka Avatara from verse number 34 to 38 are that the four logical absurdities that befalls those who assert that things are and beings exist inherently are that a noble being's mind would be totally, which is totally absorbed in emptiness, would be a destroyer of entities or things, that conventional truth would withstand the analysis of a reasoning mind, which probes into the ultimate nature of things, that the absolute production of things cannot be denied, and that the Buddha's statement, phenomena lack self-existence, would not hold true. So this ignorance which holds on to or grasps at some true existence should be countered by understanding that things have no true existence, objective existence, but that they are merely designated. And so this will help to reduce the grasping at true existence. So for me, regarding myself, I have been taking interest in the Madhyamaka philosophy since my childhood, with the help of my debate assistant, Tsongkhapa. And even after coming to exile, I've been reflecting on this Madhyamaka philosophical understanding of how things are merely designated. And in the verse number, in chapter 6, towards the end, it says, so verses 224, 225, and 226 of chapter 6 of Madhyamaka Avatara, entering the middle way. Thus illuminated by the rays of wisdom's light, the Bodhisattvas see as clearly as a gooseberry on his palm, open palm, that the three rams in their entirety are unborn from their very start, and through the force of conventional truth, he journeys to cessation. So that this journeying to the cessation is something that I also expect to make. I hope to be able to reach there. And though this mind may rest continuously in cessation, he also generates compassion for beings bereft of protection. Advancing further, he will also shine through his wisdom, though all those born from the Buddha's speech and the mid-level Buddhas. So regarding myself also, since my childhood, I have studied the Dharma, and having studied them, I have also reflected on what I have studied. And so this doesn't happen merely through faith, but through study and understanding the teaching. And it is very important for us to reflect on the teaching that we have heard and studied well. And therefore, verse number 226, at the end of chapter 6 says, and like a swan, king of swans, soaring ahead of our accomplished swans, with white wings of conventional and ultimate truth spread wide, propelled by the powerful winds of virtue, the Bodhisattva would cruise to the excellent far shore, the oceanic qualities of conquerors. So, in order to be able to do these practices, we need to engage in study of the Dharma thoroughly, and therefore the monastic institutions in South India are the main centers of learning the philosophy of Buddhism. And so, if you are able to sincerely pursue your study, reflection, and meditation, that would be a service to the teaching of the Master Tsongkhapa as well. So with regards to the three principal aspects of the path, in the various collection of varieties of writings by Master Tsongkhapa, scattered writings. Saku Wompo Ngawan Thakpa went from central Tibet to his native land in eastern Tibet, and he wrote a letter requesting a teaching from Tsongkhapa. And Tsongkhapa wrote this: practice what I have taught you, so that when I become enlightened, a Buddha, I will share the first nectar of my teaching with you. So at the end of these three principal aspects of the path, Master Tsongkhapa says, "O son, seek solitude," and so forth. And so this actually should be understood to refer to us as well. Because if you carry on with the study and practice of the stages of the path to enlightenment and these three principal aspects of the path, you would also be one of those sons of Tsongkhapa. You'll be able to make yourself a person referred by this term, the son. So homage to the most venerable teachers. So in this text, there is no separate teaching on relying on Guru. So this homage line shows that practice. So Je here refers to the foremost master, so who teaches the paths shared with the beings of small scope, and Tsun, the humble one or disciplined, shows the practice pertaining or shared with the beings of intermediate scope. And then Lama refers to the teaching pertaining to the great beings, beings of great scope. So these three words, so here this refers to those the teachings not only for those who don't only think of themselves alone, their freedom alone, but thinking of the other sentient beings as vast as the expanse of space. And so these three words refer to or signify the three capacities, beings of three teachings pertaining to beings of three capacities. And then the first verse, I shall explain here to the best of my ability the essential points of all scriptures of the conqueror, the path acclaimed by all excellent bodhisattvas, the gateway for the fortunate ones aspiring for liberation. So I shall explain to the best of my ability is an expression of humility on the part of Master Tsongkhapa. He's saying that he will teach in a concise manner the teaching of the Buddha. And then the second verse. So the second verse shows the reason for developing the thought to be free from the determination to be free from samsara or renunciation. And the third verse shows urging to generate that, and the third verse shows the reason for generating the renunciation, and then the fourth verse shows how to develop that renunciation. By cultivating in mind that this human life is so hard to find, yet has no time to spare, preoccupations with this life will cease. By contemplating repeatedly the truth of karma and samsaric suffering, preoccupations with next life will come to cease. So since you have attained this kind of higher rebirth now, which comes through the practice of the 10 virtuous practices, or avoiding the 10 non-virtuous actions. And then on top of that, you have the precepts of the novice monks and nuns, and then the fully ordained monks and nuns. So as you are habituated in this way, when not even an instant of admiration arises for the prosperities of cyclic existence, and when the thought aspiring for liberation arises day and night, at this point true renunciation has arisen. So mainly when you are able to understand the faults of our afflictive mental afflictions, then you'll be able to see that by overcoming this, you are able to reach or attain liberation. So liberation is something within and not without. So as you habituate in this way, and when even an instant of admiration arises, not even an instant of admiration arises for prosperity of cycling, and so forth. Verse number 6. So merely having renunciation does not become a cause for the omniscient state, the all-knowing state of Buddhahood. But with the help of this renunciation, if you practice the 3 trainings of morality, concentration, and wisdom, you can reach the arhatship, but not Buddhahood necessarily. And so you should not be satisfied with this path alone, but you should therefore generate or cultivate bodhicitta. How to do that? They are being swept away by constantly by the 4 rivers, bound tightly with the fetters of karma, most difficult to escape, trapped inside the iron mesh of self-grasping, and enveloped from everywhere by thick mist of ignorance. They take birth within cyclic existence that has no end, where they are endlessly tormented by the 3 sufferings. By reflecting on all your mothers who suffer such conditions, please generate the supreme awakening. So I use these lines for developing renunciation. So by reflecting on my own such a suffering condition, may I generate that of the thought of renunciation. So because we create karma through grasping at true existence and things, we suffer in samsara. So whatever appears to us, all these phenomena also appear as if they have some true existence in and of themselves. Therefore, you feel that it is imperative that I must develop this wisdom, realizing the lack of true existence in things, to overcome this grasping at true existence, this mental affliction. Because if we remain tightly bound by this self-grasping and grasping at true existence of things, then we will remain in samsara, suffering endlessly. And therefore, by reflecting on my own condition of suffering nature like this, may I generate the supreme renunciation. or may I generate the thought definitely to be free from samsara, so for renunciation. So all sentient beings are same in not being wanting suffering but wanting happiness. But though they do not want suffering, they are tormented by suffering endlessly. And they are not able to even envision this total freedom from suffering, the lasting happiness. Therefore, if you are able to see that all this suffering and the other conditions that we are in are based on our grasping at true existence, therefore, you'll be able to see that by overcoming it, you'll be able to reach that of the nirvana or liberation. So by reflecting on all mother sentient beings who suffer such conditions, please generate the supreme awakening. So this shows the methods to, or the means of developing bodhicitta, this spirit of altruistic spirit of enlightenment. Next comes that of the teaching on emptiness. If you do not have the wisdom realizing the ultimate nature, even if you gain familiarity with renunciation and awakening, you will not be able to cut the root of samsaric existence. So strive in the means of realizing dependent origination. So the Rinpoche here could have easily mentioned, so strive in the means of realizing emptiness or selflessness, but he doesn't use these words, but says dependent origination. Because understanding dependent origination can lead to this insight into realizing emptiness or selflessness by overcoming both the extremes of nihilism and eternalism. So when, with respect to all phenomena of samsara nirvana, you see the cause and effects, that cause and effects never deceive their laws. So in the 22nd chapter of Mula Madhyamaka Karika by Master Nagarjuna, there's fundamental verses of the middle way. The Tathagata is neither one nor distinct from the aggregates. The Tathagata is not, and so forth. So the Tathagata is not dependent on the aggregates, nor the aggregates on him. The Tathagata does not possess the aggregates. What else is Tathagata? So this verse can be used to refer to yourself as well, saying, I'm not one with the aggregates, nor distinct from the aggregates. I'm not within the aggregates, nor the aggregates within me. I don't possess the aggregates. Who am I, or what am I? So when you analyze in this way, you'll not be able to pinpoint anything as being me or I. So I use this verse from Mula Madhyamaka Karika in my daily meditation on emptiness, along with the lines from Master Nagarjuna's text and the Master Shantakirti's text. So, though you don't find yourself when you probe into your identity, though you don't find yourself within your aggregates or separate from the aggregates, not as one with aggregates and so forth, but you still function. Though you will not be able to find yourself within the body, the parts of the body, fingers or hands, and so forth. If you dissect yourself, your body, into its different components, you will not find anything as yourself, nor within your mind. And then when you go into tantric practice, we do reflect on the three visions of whitish appearance and so forth. And finally, you come down to that of the clear light mind. But nothing whatever of these factors can be found to be yourself. So in Dzogchen, the subjective and the object clear light, teachings on these two are somehow brought together. I've received the teachings on the seven treasuries of Longchen Rabjampa, Master Longchen Rabjampa, from Trishik Rinpoche. And so Trishik Rinpoche had gave me a commitment to read Choying Dze, the treasury of the Dharma Dhatu, at least one verse a day to read. So I do that. So in these teachings, both emptiness, nature of the thing, and also the clear light nature of mind are taught together. So I do reflect on them daily. So, when with respect to phenomena, so strive in the means of realizing dependent origination. This is a very significant expression using dependent origination. So you don't say things cannot be found when analyzed because things are empty because they cannot be found when analyzed for their identity. But the reason, the final reason that you give is because they are dependently originated. And therefore, Master Dalai Lama Rinpoche says, So the next verse says, when with respect to all phenomena of samsara, nirvana and so forth. So in relation to this, Dromtempa has said that though the fire, both the fire and your hand, do not have any intrinsic existence, yet if you put your hand in the fire, it will burn. So it shows the function that the fire functions to burn your hand, and therefore it shows that it's not non-existent, and therefore they exist through dependence. So here the focus of objectification refers to the object that is apprehended by true grasping at true existence, this ignorance. And then as I quoted Madhyamaka Avatara, whether it's about the internal experiences or external objects, they appear as if they have some objective existence from their existence to they appear in that way to our mind. But if they do have such an existence, they should be found when analyzed and searched for their identity. And therefore, since they cannot be found, what we conclude is that they are merely a name, that they are merely designated. Emptiness refers to being empty from their own side, objectively. So we conclude with the final verse. So here the term, O son, seek solitude and strengthen your power of perseverance, swiftly accomplish your ultimate aspiration. So, O son, can include ourselves as well. And regarding myself, particularly, I am from the same native land as Tsongkhapa. I also was born nearby Kumbum. Rinpoche was from Kumbum. So I feel that not only am I a follower of the Master Tsongkhapa, but I'm also from the same hometown. So this advice was given by the monk Loseling Bell to Ngawang Drakpa, a leading person of Tsoko. So there is a verse at the end in this text that I have, which says, may I also be able to train in the footsteps of Master Tsongkhapa. So as there is a tradition, I write this, whoever wrote that colophone. So with this, we are done with the teaching on the three principal aspects of the path. So as I had already said, it is very important for us to pursue the study of the teaching of Buddha. So since Master Shantarakshita established the teaching of the Nalanda tradition of Buddhism in Tibet, so he established a tradition that was followed in Nalanda. So before that, Tibetans already had connection with the Buddhist, the Chinese Buddhists, and many Chinese practitioners also had come to Tibet since the 7th century during Songtsen Gampo's time. But in China and other Buddhist countries, there is not much tradition of doing study of the teaching. And so, thanks to Master Shantarakshita, that we have this tradition of learning the teaching of the Buddha. And so, of course, there were other masters like Buddha, Tamje Khenpa and so forth. But since the time of Tsongkhapa, so in the Destiny Fulfilled, Master Tsongkhapa says that he pursued extensive studies in the beginning, and in the middle the teachings dawned as personal practical instructions, spiritual instructions, and then finally he practiced day in and day out, and then he dedicated all the virtues for the spread of the Dharma. So regarding myself, I am now almost 86 years old. Whenever I have time, I read sometimes the Kanjur and Tenjur, and there were a lot of repetitions. So Kanjur mostly has repetition of lines, whereas I read Tenjur, the translated words of the treatises of Indian masters. So although I've reached almost 86 years old, I still study the Dharma. Madhyamaka Avatara is always with me, beside me, and the auto commentary, because I have memorized Madhyamaka Avatara itself, so it helps me. So as Sakya Pandita has said, even if you were to die tomorrow, you should still educate yourself, learn something. And so in the tradition of Master Tsongkhapa, there is a very good practice of studying the text, scriptures. So all of you, I wish to request you or appeal to you to do your best to study the Dharma. So in order to commemorate the Buddha, the best thing we can do is learn what he has taught us, study. So whatever we have studied, we should follow it up with practice. As the Buddha himself said, examine my teaching just as a gold is tested by the goldsmith, by rubbing, cutting, and burning, rubbing, and cutting. Monks and nuns, monks and scholars should study and accept the teaching, not because of your faith or devotion. So the best way we should recall or remember the past masters, Buddha, Shakyamuni himself, and the 17 Nalanda masters and so forth, is to study their teachings. So next we have then next I will do the Bodhicitta ceremony. In order to reach Buddhahood, the omniscient state, the best method or means is Bodhicitta. In this verse of salutation, in the salutation verse of Madhyamaka Avatara, Chandrakirti, Master Chandrakirti, pays homage to great compassion. As compassion alone is accepted to be the seed of the perfect harvest of Buddhahood, and so forth. Verse number 2, chapter 1. So there's nothing greater than bodhicitta for accomplishing one's own desire and wishes, and also for accomplishing the aspirations of others as well. Whether it's short-term or long-term goals you have, there's nothing greater to fulfill it than bodhicitta. And bodhicitta helps in purifying our negativities and accumulating merit and wisdom. And so I do incorporate these teachings on bodhicitta and the teaching of on emptiness. So I do reflect on bodhicitta, cultivate bodhicitta on daily basis, as well as the wisdom realizing emptiness on daily basis, using the reasons given by Master Chandrakirti, using those 4 logical absurdities, and so forth. And then at the end of the 3rd chapter of Bodhisattvacharya Avatara, it says, I've called upon the protectors So I have put restrictions on the practice of the Doji Shugdin. He's only an object of compassion. So what obstructs us to practice compassion is anger. And to counter anger, we should practice patience. And therefore, those who provoke anger in us give us the opportunity to practice patience. So they become precious for us in our practice of the Dharma. Instead of becoming angry, you feel compassion for them. So I'll do the Bodhicitta ceremony. So at the end of the third chapter of Bodhicharya Avatara, it says, "Today in the presence of the old protectors, I invite transmigrators as my guests to Sugadhahood, and in the meantime, a temporal happiness. May gods, demigods, and others rejoice." So the Buddha Shakyamuni himself was born in a royal family. Until 29 years of age, he lived in the palace, and then he left palace and became an ascetic, went through the 6-year practice of austerity, and then become enlightened. That is from the common parlance of the common ordinary being's perception. But from the greater vehicle tradition, from the perspective of great vehicle tradition, he was already enlightened, and he had already attained the three Buddha bodies. He attained the Dharmakaya, from which manifests the Sambhogakaya, which is qualified by the 5 attributes or qualifications, and from the Sambhogakaya form he appeared further, emanated into the Supreme Nirmanakaya, emanation body, Supreme Emanation body. And therefore, all these deeds are the enlightened deeds of the Buddha, birth to death. And so I have given you teaching on the 3 principal aspects of the path. So since we do study the teaching of the Buddha, we can explain how the Buddha attained the Buddha bodies, how he became a Supreme Nirmanakaya, how he attained Sambhogakaya, and so forth. Not just saying that, the Buddha appeared as a historical being 2,600 years or so ago, but then we can explain the Buddha, having generated bodhicitta within himself, went through the arduous practice of accumulating merit and wisdom for over 3 countless eons. So he went through the impure realms, and then he attained the pure experiences of the bodhisattvas and so forth, until culminating into Buddhahood. So imagine the Buddha in front of us in the space, and surrounded by the 8 bodhisattva deities, and then the great masters of India, the 17 Nalanda masters and so forth, and also the 25 masters of Tibet, from the different traditions, Nyingma, Kagyu, Sakya, Kadam, and Geluk. So since the teachings are really effective for us to transform our mind, we should understand that these masters, beginning with the Buddha himself, down to our own masters, have attained what they have attained, the three bodies, the qualities of body, speech, and mind, and so forth, through the practice of the Dharma. And therefore, we should also feel determined to praise them, and to also train ourselves in their footsteps. As long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of transmigrators. Such a courage should be mustered by us. So the Buddha, surrounded by the 8 Bodhisattva deities, and also the Tibetan masters of the Kagyu Nyingma, Sajja, Geluk, and so forth, and also Jezan Rinpoche, surrounded by particularly those of the 8 pure disciples. So with this visualization, have the determination to train in their footsteps and generate bodhicitta for the benefit of all sentient beings. So let us say this verse of taking refuge and bodhicitta. I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach enlightenment. So I seek refuge in the 3 jewels. I confess each and every wrongdoing. I rejoice in the virtues of all beings. I take to heart the state of Buddhahood. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. In order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I shall develop the spirit of enlightenment. Having developed the spirit of highest enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests, shall enact the delightful supreme enlightening practices. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Say this 3 times, please. I seek refuge in the 3 jewels. I confess each and every wrongdoing. I rejoice in the virtues of all beings. I take to heart the state of Buddhahood. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. In order to fulfill my aims of myself and others, I should develop the spirit of enlightenment. Having developed the spirit of my highest enlightenment, I shall invite the sentient beings as my guests. I shall enact the delightful supreme enlightening practice, and may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And that third, in order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I should develop the spirit of enlightenment. Shows that of the aspiring bodhicitta. And having developed the spirit of highest enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall enact the delightful supreme enlightening practices. Shows that of the engaging bodhicitta. And so, in short, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So, it is popularly said that we can become enlightened in one lifetime within this one human, on the basis of this human body in this life. So if you have this determination to practice bodhicitta for the benefit of all sentient beings and train in the bodhicitta for the benefit of all sentient beings throughout my lifetime, that would be a big determination that you will be able to make to reach the goal. So the verses from the Bodhisattvachara Avatara, which says that today my life has borne fruit. Having well obtained this human existence, I've been born into the Buddha family, and now am one of Buddha's children, and so forth. And then it says, just like a blind man discovering a jewel in a heap of trash, likewise, by some coincidence, I have found the enlightenment spirit. The spirit of enlightenment within me. So when you determine yourself that there's nothing else that I have to do except to benefit all to do things that are beneficial to all sentient beings. In order to benefit all sentient beings, so this the verse that His Holiness is referring to is, it is the evergreen that shelters all beings wandering tired on the roads of life or existence. It is the universal bridge that frees beings from wretched lives. It is the rising moon that dispels the torment of addictions or afflictions. It is the great sun that burns away the mighty ignorance of the world. It is the quintessential butter from the churning of the milk of Dharma for all guests traveling the path of life who wish to experience a true happiness. The Spirit will satisfy them with joy and exalt them in the highest bliss. Today, in the presence of all protectors, I invite transmigrators as my guests to Sugadahut, and in the meantime, temporal happiness, gods, demigods, and others. Rejoice. And of course, you can also take Bodhisattva vows and reflect on the 18 root downfalls and this 46 secondary infractions of Bodhisattva vows. So I'm Tenzin Phuntsok, Shawol Kendril. Your Holiness, with due respect, obeisance to you on this special occasion of the full moon day of Saka Dawa, I wish to request you, I wish to inform you that just as we have requested you, I, on behalf of everyone who have received your teaching today, would like to thank you for teaching on the three principal aspects of the path. And I wish to make my prayer to you to live a very long life and also continue to give us teachings, and also please take care of us throughout our lifetimes, even in the future. So, Loseling Tulku Association in the past made requests to Your Holiness for teachings, and you have consented to them in the past. And also, we wish to request you to continue to give us teachings, and may you please accept our invitation or request. So I forget one thing. So because of the pandemic, which also has spread quite badly in India, but it seems that the situation is improving today. So from the Tawang areas and Ladakh and Sikkim areas, it seems there are some problems still existing in these places due to the pandemic. So in order for this pandemic to subside, to be pacified in time. So for that, as the prayer of Tara says, you are the liberator of beings from samsara and so forth. It would be helpful if you could recite the Tara mantra, Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Swaha. So I think there is some hope that we can pacify this pandemic. So please, if you could recite this 10-syllable mantra of Aryatara, it will help the patients, those who are suffering this coronavirus, and also it may help the places and nations afflicted by this pandemic. So this is not something new, reciting the mantra of Aryatara. So I wish to tell the people in these different areas that I mentioned, and I also get requests from people to for the pacification of this pandemic, and I've been telling them to recite the mantra of Aryatara. If it doesn't help, then you should sue Aryatara, because the prayers to her in this verse says, you liberate beings from diseases and sicknesses. So if she doesn't help in overcoming this disease, then we should sue her. So every day I recite the Aryatara mantra, a few hundreds, and then one round of mala for myself, so that I may not catch this disease. And so I do this practice of reciting mantras for others as well as myself daily. So you could also tell others to recite this mantra of Aryatara for the pacification of the pandemic. So next is mandala offering, Thanksgiving mandala offering. Verse of long life of His Holiness.
आपके स्वास्थ्य का प्रहरी श्री बालाजी हॉस्पिटल कांगड़ा हिमाचल।